There are moments in Formula One that hit you like a bolt of lightning, unexpected, electrifying, and unforgettable. What happened in Hungary was exactly that. Charles Leclerc, against all odds, ripped the script apart and seized pole position in a way that defied expectations, logic, and maybe even Ferrari's own understanding of their car. This was a weekend where everyone expected McLaren domination, a weekend where Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri looked untouchable in every session. And yet, when it mattered most, when the pressure was dialed up and every millisecond countered, it was Leclerc who delivered. It wasn't just a fast lap. It was a statement, a roar against the noise and the fallout. Chaos, shock, silence, in some garages, and questions erupting in every direction. The qualifying session was unlike anything we've seen this season. The McLarens had been inch perfect all weekend, consistently at the top of the timesheets. Piastri, in particular, had been flying, posting a 1 minute 14 seconds and 9 milliseconds that should have clinched pole with half a second to spare. But qualifying isn't just about raw speed. It's about timing, track evolution, confidence, and flawless execution under pressure. And in Q3, it all fell apart for McLaren. Meanwhile, Leclerc danced with the SF25 on the edge, threading it through every apex like a man possessed. Ferrari had battled tire inconsistencies, setup confusion, and inconsistent grip levels all weekend, but in the decisive moment, everything clicked, at least for Charles. Carlos Sainz didn't even make it to Q3, but Leclerc did more than make it. He conquered it, and right behind the Ferrari heroics was a curious subplot: Lewis Hamilton, out in Q2, driving a setup with significantly more rear downforce than Leclerc, which gave him more stability in theory but at the cost of agility. The compromise didn't pay off. Even getting through Q1 had been a challenge, and as the temperatures dropped and the track conditions changed, Hamilton struggled to keep the rear end planted through the final sectors. It begs the question, was this another missed opportunity by Ferrari on Hamilton's side of the garage, or was it a strategic experiment gone wrong? Either way, it raises questions about how this partnership is functioning on track and behind the scenes. Speaking of behind the scenes, there was a moment in the paddock that sent a ripple of speculation through the F1 world. Ferrari team boss Fred Vasseur was seen walking into Mercedes hospitality with none other than Ferrari chairman John Elkann by his side. Mere social call. Unlikely Toto Wolff might be a friend, but that's not how these paddock meetings usually work, especially not with the president of Ferrari trailing behind. So what were they talking about? Theories exploded. Was it about Hamilton's former race engineer, Pete Bonington? Was Ferrari trying to lure Bono over as part of a deeper integration with Hamilton's side of the team? Or was it something even bigger, like power unit alignment, ahead of the 2026 regulation changes? The most likely answer, though perhaps the least exciting, is that it was about engines and the long-term strategic direction of both teams. Still, the timing was intriguing, and the presence of Elkann only fuels the intrigue. Back on the track, the drama deepened. Aston Martin came alive completely unexpectedly. Lance Stroll was within a tenth of pole. Fernando Alonso was purple, through multiple sectors. It was the first time in months that Aston Martin genuinely looked like a front-running threat. Their recent upgrade package appears to be finally delivering. Some say it might be the early influence of Adrian Newey, whose rumored involvement with Aston Martin in 2025 has already stirred the pot. Whether that's true or not, something has clearly clicked. The car was compliant, quick through the technical sections, and looked like it belonged in the fight. Alonso, for a brief moment, looked like a contender for pole, and Stroll delivered a lap good enough to rattle the grid. Meanwhile, the defending world champion was nowhere. Max Verstappen was P12. He described the Red Bull as a nightmare to drive. Rear grip was non-existent. High speed, low speed, didn't matter. The car was stiff, unpredictable, and completely uncooperative. Verstappen's frustration boiled. Over on the radio, even Yuki Tsunoda, in essentially the same machinery, was snapping at his engineers, urging them to wake up. This wasn't just a setup issue. It was a fundamental flaw in Red Bull's high downforce package on Achilles' heel that's been exposed multiple times now, and they still haven't found the cure. Verstappen wasn't just slow, he was lost. And with both Red Bulls out of position, suddenly the race dynamics looked completely different. Qualifying turned into a perfect storm. Cooler track temps, rapidly evolving grip, and high-pressure execution. Mercedes sent Antonelli and Russell out early, maybe too early, while Aston Martin and Ferrari timed it perfectly. Russell missed pole by half a tenth. Antonelli wasn't far behind. McKenna was Leclerc, who capitalized on the window. The Red Bulls, they got stuck in the shuffle. Early laps, deteriorating grip, and slower times as others improved. Verstappen fell. Yuki fell. And while Lawson, Stroll, and Alonso surged, names like Gasly, Albon, and Hülkenberg were left behind. The margins were razor-thin, but the consequences, massive. And now we sit at a pivotal moment in this season. Ferrari has proven they can still deliver magic, but only when everything aligns. Red Bull looks vulnerable deeply, on certain circuits. McLaren remained dangerous, but not invincible. And Aston Martin? Maybe, just maybe, they've found something again. But what happens next? Can Ferrari turn Leclerc's pole into a win? Can Hamilton bounce back from another frustrating Saturday? And will Red Bull find a way to make their car drivable again before the title slips through their fingers? This wasn't just a qualifying session, it was a reckoning. And it sets the stage for one of the most unpredictable races of the season. What just happened in Hungary wasn't just another twist in the 2025 Formula One season, it was a seismic jolt. A moment that left fans stunned, teams scrambling, and Lewis Hamilton, the most successful driver in the history of this circuit, questioning himself in ways we rarely see. Charles Leclerc, driving what's often described as an unpredictable, temperamental Ferrari, just ripped pole position out of nowhere. At a track where overtaking is brutally difficult, that achievement isn't just symbolic, it could decide the entire outcome of Sunday's race. And what made it even more unbelievable, McLaren were expected to dominate, they should have dominated, but they didn't. They buckled, and while they stumbled, Ferrari against all logic delivered when it mattered most. The drama began building long before Q3. In Q1 and Q2, Leclerc and Hamilton were both on the ropes. Ferrari put them on old tires. Traffic was an issue, and Leclerc's frustration was boiling over. "Just don't send me out into traffic," he pleaded on the radio, only for the team to do exactly that. Still, he found something. Scraped through. Hamilton did not. And that's where this story takes a different turn. Because Hungary isn't just another race for Lewis. It's his track. He's dominated here more than any driver in history. 9 poles, 8 wins. But this time, he was out before the final shootout even began. It wasn't a massive gap either, just a few tenths. But that's the fine margin between failure and glory in F1. And the most frustrating part for Hamilton, the other Ferrari, was on pole, same car, same session, same conditions. And while Leclerc called it his worst track of the season, he delivered a lap for the ages. Hamilton, on the other hand, was left questioning everything. He said it himself, "I'm absolutely useless. The team probably needs a new driver." He wasn't throwing blame at Ferrari, he was looking inward. And for a 7-time world champion, those words carry weight. This wasn't PR sanitized Hamilton. This was raw, hard-and-sleeve Lewis. It was brutal, and it was honest. But his frustration is understandable. The SF25 is a mystery of a machine. One weekend, it's a midfield car. The next, it's challenging for wins. The window for performance is razor thin, and this weekend, Hamilton missed it by inches. His rear tires were giving up on the final corners, and even the throttle response didn't seem to inspire confidence. Meanwhile, Leclerc, always enigmatic, often inconsistent, found the balance when it counted. In qualifying, timing is everything, and Ferrari got it right on one side of the garage, and that chaos extended across the grid. Antonelli, too, was out early. McLaren's Norris and Piastri looked untouchable all weekend, then till the wind shifted direction and suddenly everything changed. Piastri put in a solid lap, but it wasn't enough. Norris had a scruffy run. Russell was purple in the first 2 sectors but had a big snap in the final corner that cost him what could have been a front-row start. Aston Martin came alive, Alonso splitting the McLarens. Stroll just a 10th off pole. Suddenly, the grid was flipped. The order that seemed so inevitable was gone, and Leclerc just kept improving. Max Verstappen's situation was no better. "I've got no grip. It's like driving on ice," he told his engineer during his outlap. The reigning champion was struggling with the car all weekend. Rear grip, balance, tire wear, it was all falling apart. His final time was only good enough for P8 to Tsunoda, despite being closer to Max than any teammate has been in years. Was out in P16, and that might define his entire Red Bull future. He's joined the team just as the car has become almost undrivable in high downforce trim. If he'd been given the same seat a year ago, the story might have been different. But this is the cruel timing of Formula One success. Depends not just on talent, but on when and where you land. And yet, among all this chaos, among the shuffling of giants and the rise of unexpected contenders, it was Charles Leclerc, on his so-called worst track, who stood tallest. He was under the radar all weekend. The spotlight was on McLaren, Red Bull, even Aston Martin. But when it counted, Leclerc delivered. And now, heading into Sunday, he's not just holding pole, he's holding the keys to the race. Hungary is notoriously difficult to overtake on. Without rain or chaos, track position matters more than raw pace. So now, McLaren have to play strategy chess. Do they split their cars? Who do they pit first? What if Russell is pressuring from behind? Of course, Leclerc could still be a sitting duck. The McLarens are fast, maybe faster over race distance. But if Charles gets cleanly through turn 1, it changes everything. Think back to Spa. Think back to Suzuka. Leclerc has shown he can hold off faster cars when it counts. And now, with the McLarens starting just behind, Sunday's strategy could define more than just one race. It could shape the championship narrative going into the break. And then there's Hamilton. He won't be a factor in the race start. But don't write him off. Not yet. If we've learned anything over the years, it's this. When Hamilton hits a low, the comeback is usually not far behind. Whether he has the car underneath him or not, whether he gets a little help from chaos or whether we've seen this story before. And it rarely ends with him staying down for long. This qualifying session wasn't just about speed. It was about pressure, resilience, timing, and heart. And what we saw from Hamilton, from Leclerc, from Alonso and Russell was a reminder that this sport is as much psychological as it is mechanical. That behind every lap time is a human story of triumph, disappointment, and determination. If you're as hooked as we are by the unpredictability of this season, now's the time to get involved. Hit the like button if you felt the shock of this qualifying session. Subscribe for more deep dive analysis like this and let me know in the comments. Who do you think is going to come out on top in Hungary? And more importantly, has this weekend revealed cracks in the armor of Red Bull, McLaren, or even Hamilton's Ferrari future? The conversation starts now.